It was hard to believe that the gentle cadence of my existence could be interrupted by something so tiny, so commonplace, a simple favor, and that's where it all began. Over breakfast, my husband casually tossed out the idea, his black coffee steaming beside him, the same familiar brew he always enjoyed. Each morning, he sipped quietly, as if the ritual held no tales to tell. His words faded into the background, overshadowed by the rhythmic clink of his spoon against the cup. He mentioned that it would assist him in finding his footing. He has a knack for working with his hands, suggesting he could mend the fence and perhaps handle the garage door as well. I agreed. Naturally, there was no reason to hesitate. The young man he spoke of had woven himself into the fabric of our lives for years. His adoptive grandson, though in my eyes, he had long since outgrown the notion of being a child. He had transformed. The last time I encountered him, he lingered in that in-between space, straddling the line between youth and maturity. Yet now, as he crossed the threshold of our home with that effortless, carefree grin, he moved with the confidence of someone fully aware of their own identity. It caught my attention before I fully realized what was happening. With shoulders that seemed to stretch wider, a jawline that cut through the air, and a newfound confidence in his every step, he was transformed in a way that captivated those around him. The handshake conveyed strength. The gaze was unwavering, yet warm, inviting a sense of camaraderie. And yet there was an undercurrent, a smoothness that seemed almost too intentional. My husband offered him a brief glimpse of the backyard, pointing out the broken latch on the gate and the tools in the garage, discussing the details. In that straightforward manner, typical of men, focused and pragmatic with little interest in anything beyond the task at hand. I stood at the kitchen window, observing them, my fingers mindlessly tracing the rim of my coffee cup, sensing an odd, unidentifiable tension coiling itself somewhere deep within my ribs. It wasn't longing. Not at this moment, it was understanding. That evening, as I navigated the comforting rhythm of making dinner, I discovered myself selecting a dress that had been tucked away for months, its fabric gentle against my skin. Delicate fabric, slender straps, the sort that embraces just enough to evoke a sense of self. I convinced myself it was due to the sweltering warmth. The warmth of summer enveloped the windows, the atmosphere dense and suffocating, yet I was aware of the truth. On the terrace, the three of us shared a meal, creating a moment filled with laughter and connection. My husband shared tales primarily centered around his job, weaving in details about the journey he was preparing for, to embark on yet another conference, another round of meetings, his words weaving through the familiar rhythm of duties and timelines. I absorbed the words, acknowledging with nods at the right moments, yet my gaze wandered repeatedly to the figure seated opposite me. He sat back, one arm slung over the chair's back, a hint of stubble on his jaw, suggesting he had taken a laid-back approach to the day, as if the morning's routine had slipped his mind. His gaze met mine for a fleeting moment, yet it held on just a heartbeat longer than expected. As the last bite was savored, my husband rose from the table, a hint of purpose in his stride to attend to some calls that awaited him. I lingered outside collecting the plates, feigning ignorance to the soft footsteps trailing behind me, as the younger man drew near. He extended his hand toward the pile of dishes I was holding. "Allow me to assist you." In that fleeting moment, our fingers brushed against each other, a whisper of connection in the air, a gentle touch. There was no purpose behind it, just a subtle detail that would likely go unnoticed by others. Yet the feeling lingered, a gentle warmth embracing my skin. Long after the plates had been cleared away, as night settled in, I found myself lying in bed next to my husband, the rhythmic sound of his breathing filling the room. Yet sleep eluded me. Restlessness coursed through me beneath the sheets, while my thoughts swirled chaotically, refusing to align. As I rose from my slumber, I padded softly through the shadowy corridor, my feet whispering against the cool floor, drawn by the simple desire for a glass of water in the quiet of the night. Yet it wasn't a longing for water that held me in the grip of wakefulness. I lingered at the threshold of the guest room. The door stood ever so slightly open. From deep within, whispers of a gentle melody linger in the air. Wandered away. A gentle, whimsical melody softly murmured as he wandered about within. The floorboards groaned softly under his weight, each creak whispering secrets of the past, the soft whisper of fabric in motion. The gentle rush of water begins to fill the air, the sound of droplets cascading onto the cool, hard surface, creating a rhythmic melody that dances through the air. I remained still, captivated by the sounds around me. That simple, personal moment. Once upon a time, there was a serene moment of bathing, relaxing as the day comes to a close. It was as if a deep connection had formed in an instant intrusive. It felt like I was observing a secret unfolding before my eyes. Yet I remained still. Not just yet. As I finally made my way back to bed, the familiar ache of quiet tension lingered in my body. I nestled beneath the covers next to my husband. The comforting sensation of his arm, draped gently over my waist, enveloped me. As he shifted in his slumber, his touch was soft and tender. Customary. In a state of unawareness, it was a familiar tale, one that had unfolded countless times before. Yet my thoughts lingered just beyond that guest room door. I reassured myself that it was insignificant. I reassured myself that this too would fade away. I convinced myself it was just a figment of my imagination. Yet a change had begun to unfold. The following morning emerged with the same familiar rhythm as always. The morning light streamed through the half-open blinds, creating a dance of shadows and brightness on the kitchen floor. Inviting tales of the day ahead, I drifted along, lost in the flow of actions, my mind elsewhere. The kettle whistles, and the gentle sound of a butter knife glides across the toast. The soft, steady murmur of the refrigerator accompanied my hand as it sought the milk. My husband had already departed, as he often does, leaving behind a fleeting kiss on my cheek. Before the front door softly closed, sealing off the world outside, everyday life unfolds in a series of moments, each one a thread in the tapestry of our experiences. Anticipated, I urged myself to cease, to calm the restless emotions that had awakened within me the previous night. I convinced myself that I had outgrown such foolishness, too wise to allow my thoughts to wander without restraint. Yet in subtle ways, my body let me down. Once more, I found myself pondering the selection of my dress that morning, the careful consideration I put into my appearance as I tied my hair, pulled back, a hint of color gracing my lips. Certainly not for just anyone, simply for the purpose of experiencing. Once upon a time, there was something. There he was outside, fully immersed in his task at the fence, sleeves rolled up, muscles flexed as he drove the old rusted nails back into their rightful spots. He was entirely engrossed, lost in the task at hand, seemingly oblivious, or maybe intentionally feigning ignorance of my existence. As I lingered on the porch, observing him, the sweat tracing the line of his brow shimmered in the morning light, sparkling like delicate beads of glass on his skin. His body flowed with the grace of a seasoned storyteller, each movement deliberate and relaxed, as if weaving a tale with every gesture. I descended toward the garden, cradling the laundry basket with a deliberate elegance that I had honed through the passage of time. Should he become aware? The fabric of my dress danced around my legs, the delicate strap gently sliding off my shoulder. He offered no sign yet as I extended my hand to attach the first piece of fabric to the line. I sensed his stare, deliberate and lingering. It enveloped me, firm and unyielding, like gentle hands resting softly on my back. I hesitated to turn, my gaze fixed on the clothespins, a rush of adrenaline coursing through me as I turned my gaze to him. His face was a mystery, lips slightly parted, as if he were about to share a secret. At last he spoke, his voice smooth and low, remarking on the morning's warmth, which had caught him by surprise. I offered a slight nod, feigning concentration on my work. Indeed it is. That moment could have marked the conclusion. That moment felt like the perfect conclusion. Yet he chose not to return to his job. He approached me, each step deliberate and unhurried, across the neatly kept grass, pausing just within reach, allowing me to sense the subtle warmth radiating from him. "In the space between us, you seem transformed today," he remarked. I chose not to respond. My voice felt unreliable. Instead, I reached for another pin, meticulously securing the next piece of fabric onto the line, my hands unwavering, despite the rapid beating of my heart beneath my ribs. In that fleeting silence, the air thickened, suspended in a delicate balance, as if time itself held its breath, waiting for what would come next. "Apologies for what happened last night," he murmured, his voice gentle and tinged with uncertainty. If I had recognized the boundary, I could have put an end to it right then and there. I might have accepted the invitation, smiled graciously, and reassured him that everything was just fine, absolutely nothing amiss. Yet there I was caught in the intensity of his stare, lingering longer than intended with purpose. Behind each moment I did respond. You know? The words slipped out before I could pause to consider their weight. He moved in just within reach, allowing me to catch a glimpse of the delicate shadow of stubble tracing his jawline, and I noticed how his eyes narrowed ever so slightly as he took in every detail of my expression. His hand shifted, uncertain in the beginning. As the gentle touch of fingers glided over the smooth expanse of my shoulder, I remained still, savoring the moment. We lingered in that moment, the atmosphere around us, heavy with all the words left unsaid. And then, as if the atmosphere could no longer contain the suspense, he leaned in, bridging the gap between us in one smooth, assured movement. The kiss unfolded in a way that completely surprised me. It wasn't a matter of urgency. It was quite smooth. It was tender. Exploring the delicate touch of one set of lips, meeting another, inviting not demanding. His hand rose to my jaw, his thumb softly brushing my cheek as he turned my face to meet his gaze. In that fleeting moment, my body became still, a rush of alarms echoing in my mind. Yet my lips betrayed me parting ever so slightly. In that moment, as I met his gaze, my response came slowly and with a tremor. The basket slipped from my grasp, and I barely noticed the soft thud as it hit the ground, the sound drowned out by the rush of blood in my ears. His palm radiated warmth as it glided along the curve of my neck, fingers delicately grazing the spot where my dress embraced my skin. I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat, my eyes growing wide with surprise. "This cannot be!" I struggled, the phrases heavy, awkward. He chose not to share debate. He took a step back, creating distance between us. His hands lifted as if to show he meant no harm, yet his gaze remained fixed on me, steadfast. "I understand," he murmured, "but that won't keep us from desiring it." I averted my gaze, hoping he wouldn't notice the warmth creeping into my cheeks as I bent down to collect the disarrayed laundry with trembling fingers. The remainder of the day faded into familiarity, tending to the plants, cleaning the counters, and responding to my husband's call as he inquired about dinner arrangements. I maintained a calm demeanor, my smile unwavering, yet each time I shut my eyes, the memory of his lips lingered haunting me. It lingered in my mind. The flavor of that morning's kiss remained like a hidden treasure within me, undeniable and persistent. No matter how fiercely I tried to bury it under the weight of chores, phone calls, courteous exchanges, and the routine tasks that ought to occupy my thoughts, yet they chose not to. They only began to uncover the depths. Within me, a storm brewed each sensation, heightened my mind trapped in a relentless loop of the same unspoken tales. He carried on as if nothing had transpired, or at the very least he was quite skilled at feigning it. As we moved through the house, our paths intersecting in the hallway, shoulders grazing near the sink, his demeanor remained steady, inscrutable, infuriatingly serene. Yet there were moments when I sensed his gaze upon me, just at the edge of my vision, lingering for a heartbeat longer before he averted his eyes. It lacked any hint of remorse, any trace of embarrassment, just that unwavering, calm determination. It pushed me to be daring, or perhaps just truthful. As the sun set on the horizon, my husband shared the news that he would be departing at dawn. A spontaneous journey for work awaits, perhaps 3 days or maybe 4. His voice carried a hint of regret, yet his gaze remained fixed on his phone, fingers dancing over the screen as he chewed his food. During dinner, I wore a smile, nodded in agreement, and spoke the appropriate words. "Absolutely, it's significant. No need to fret, I've got this under control," and I truly felt it. At least a part of me did, but there was another side. Another chapter ignited. That night, I lingered in front of the bathroom mirror, my fingers exploring the delicate curve of my collarbone, captivated by the way my skin responded to my own gentle caress. I selected my nightgown with an abundance of thought. Gentle touch, tender material, it was an allure that whispered secrets hidden from the eyes of the world. The figure in the mirror gazed at me as if we were unfamiliar to one another, a woman I hadn't seen in ages. I spent the night wide awake. My body rested quietly beneath the sheets, my breath calm and even, as I listened to my husband turn shift and ultimately find his place in the soothing cadence of deep slumber beside me. As the weight of the moment became too much to bear, I slipped from the bed, my bare feet gliding softly over the hardwood floor. I made my way down the hallway and stepped onto the terrace where the cool night air embraced my flushed skin. He stood there relaxed against the railing arms, crossed his silhouette, softly illuminated by the gentle glow of the moonlight. I found myself pondering whether he had been in a state of anticipation, or if the same unease had drawn him from his slumber just as it had for me. As the gentle click of the door echoed in the stillness, he shifted his gaze, his eyes locating me effortlessly in the shadows, and a silence enveloped us both. I found myself anchored to the doorframe, my fingers clutching it as if it could provide the support I needed to bear the heaviness of the moment. His eyes wandered, following the curve of my figure, the delicate material of my nightgown, offering scant cover for what lay beneath. There was a moment when I could have turned away, retreated into the safety of my own space, hidden myself away, and wished for the dawn to break. Instead, I moved in a little closer. The gap between us vanished in an instant, as if an invisible force pulled us closer, compelling us to surrender to the moment. His hand moved toward me, lightly grazing my wrist. Like a whisper of curiosity, I remained close. My hand moved as if guided by an unseen force, coming to rest along the contour of his jaw, where the texture of his stubble brushed against my palm. And the warmth of his skin pulsed just beneath the surface. I found myself murmuring, "This isn't where I belong." His response emerged softly unwavering. "Yet you truly are." The intensity of his gaze was unlike that of a boy lost in dreams. It was the look of a man who understood his desires, stirring something profound within me, causing a twist of longing and pain. His hand glided to the small of my back, drawing me in gently, allowing me the chance to halt his advance. I did not. My body nestled against his, as if it were meant to be there. There, my head tilting back, lips opening just before his brushed against mine. As their lips met, it unfolded gently with a tender slowness, each moment carefully crafted. A question conveyed not through speech, but through the tender touch of lips, meeting the gentle glide of his hand, tracing the silhouette of my waist. He kissed me as if he were trying to etch the moment into his memory. Every moment mattered, lingered, and I allowed him to take it in. I pressed my lips against his, with a shared unspoken longing, my fingers weaving into the fabric of his shirt, drawing him nearer. The night enveloped us in its embrace, the air heavy with warmth, and the intoxicating fragrance of jasmine wafting up from the garden below. Somewhere within the walls of the house, the clock continued its rhythmic ticking, oblivious to the tempest brewing between us. At last I pulled away, gasping for air, my hand lingering against his chest. He stayed still, not reaching out to bring me back. He released me, yet his gaze remained fixed on my own. With a gentle tone, he expressed his lack of regret. I chose to remain silent. I stepped back, turning away and shutting the door with hands that quivered, as if they had lost their connection to me. The following morning, all things resumed their familiar form. The kitchen came alive once more, with the soothing sounds of running water, the gentle clink of dishes, and the soft hum of the radio in the background. By the front door, my husband's suitcase lingered packed and poised for his early journey ahead. He pressed his lips to my cheek as he left the action, feeling like an old tale, one that was well rehearsed and comforting. Yet my body held on to the memories of that night. Every nerve tingled beneath my skin, every part of me vibrated with the memory of his lips on mine, and in that moment, I realized this was just the beginning of something profound. The dawn broke, revealing just the start of what was to come. The world donned its familiar guise of normalcy so convincingly that for a fleeting moment, I nearly succumbed to the illusion myself. Once upon a time, the sky stretched out in a breathtaking clarity, the sun shining down with a warmth that felt like a gentle embrace. A soft breeze danced through the open windows, whispering sweet nothings, as if it longed to carry me away into a world of dreams. The charm of everyday moments unfolds as the coffee swirls in its cup. The toast achieves that perfect golden hue, and the daily routines dance together like actors in a finely tuned performance. I lingered at the kitchen table, my fingers gently gliding in slow circles around the rim of my mug, lost in thought. The chair opposite me sat vacant, the atmosphere in the room heavy with the echoes of the events from the previous night. My body bore it like a secret etched beneath the surface, that kiss, that intimacy. The gentle, intentional touch of his lips on mine, the longing it created within me. I reminded myself once more that this had to come to an end, that I could regain control, that I hadn't ventured beyond a point of no return. Yet my body turned against me with each thought of him, the recollection of his hand resting on my waist, the conviction in his voice when he declared he felt no remorse. There was a moment when I could have felt rage, a wave of self-reproach washing over me. Yet all that remained was the constant beat of desire resonating deep within, as if my very being had at last awakened to the essence of sensation. As the gentle creak of the back door reached my ears and the soft footsteps glided across the kitchen floor, I chose to keep my gaze down for a moment longer. Before he even uttered a word, I recognized him instantly. His presence enveloped the space, a silent narrative, unfolding even in his stillness. "I'm setting off to gather some supplies." His voice pierced the quiet, relaxed, and effortless. "Is there something you'd like me to bring back from town?" I shook my head, my gaze captivated by the swirling patterns in my coffee. "No, I'm good." It was a fragile deception, so delicate that I could sense its fracture before the words even reached my ears. Yet he chose not to confront it. He departed as silently as he arrived, the door softly shutting behind him. Gently lingering in the background, the burden of his absence felt nearly as profound as his presence. I dedicated the following hours to rediscovering my own essence. Folding laundry with meticulous care, polishing countertops that are already spotless, and reorganizing the books on the shelf just to keep my hands busy. Yet the tension thrumming beneath my skin remained as sharp as ever. Each movement seemed like a shadow of what once was a play I had lost faith in. As the day began to wane, the oppressive hush that enveloped the house became increasingly unbearable. I reminded myself that stepping outside even briefly was essential to refresh my mind and find a new perspective. I picked up my keys, slipped on a light jacket, even though the day was warm, and set off on my drive. The heart of the town, where the pavement meets the gaze, while the mind wanders to distant tales. The streets held a sense of familiarity, a comforting predictability, the familiar little grocery store that had been a part of my life for so long. The familiar tranquil cafe on the corner where pears lingered over their cups, enveloped in a cozy hush. I meandered through the aisles, my fingers brushing against the shelves, as if selecting a box of cereal might tether me to the world around me. And then he appeared before me. As I rounded the bend by the fruits and vegetables, suddenly he appeared before me. At the far end of the aisle, he stood with one hand on the shopping cart handle, his head tilted just so as he absorbed the details on the label. A vessel. He glanced upward, locking eyes with me, and for a fleeting instant, we both remained still. It felt like fate had woven a tapestry of events, each thread too intentional to be mere chance. A knot formed in my stomach, and my breath hung suspended, caught in the space between my chest and throat. He gave a casual half-smile, relaxed and unfazed. Did not, I braced myself, attempting to mirror his relaxed demeanor. Likewise, the distance that separated us seemed incredibly narrow, even with the expanse of the aisle stretching before us. We both stood there quiet, each of us feigning ignorance, to the tension crackling in the unspoken moments that hung in the air. "Looking for some assistance with your load?" After a moment of silence, he pointed to my vacant basket and inquired. A subtle sparkle of mirth danced in his gaze. "I'm fine," I responded, my tone lacking the warmth I meant to convey. Yet I chose to stay. Instead, we strolled down the next aisle together, side by side, weaving in and out of a light conversation about the mundane. Once upon a time, there was a day filled with peculiar weather where the price of fresh herbs seemed to tell a tale of its own, and the parking situation outside was nothing short of a comedic adventure. As our fingers grazed each other in a fleeting moment, we both reached for the same box of tea. Neither of us offered an apology. The journey back was serene, the vehicle resonating with the gentle purr of the engine and the palpable weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. His gaze would occasionally find me as I looked out the window, attempting to mask the frantic beating of my heart against my ribs. As we arrived at the house, he silenced the engine yet remained still, hesitating to open the door. Instead, he shifted his gaze toward me, reclining a bit in his chair. "I never expected to cross paths with you," he murmured, "yet I find myself grateful for the choice I made." In that moment, I gazed at him deeply, and for the first time it all became clear to me. the same conflict swirling within his gaze that I sensed igniting within myself. The yearning, the holding back, the silent, aching recognition of our actions. "This is perilous," I remarked. His words were almost a whisper, yet his gaze remained locked on mine, steady and unyielding. "I understand." Time hung in the air and heavy and overflowing with meaning. And then, with a measured grace, he extended his hand, his fingers gliding over the delicate skin of my wrist, gentle as a whisper, as if gauging my response to his touch. I did not. He leaned in, his gaze locked onto mine, anticipation hanging in the air, offering me a decision to make. And once more, I let him continue on his path. His lips brushed against mine softly at first, cautious, savoring the moment, like the initial taste of a secret delight. Yet the pause was fleeting. The kiss unfolded, lingering yet assured. His hand gently supported the back of my neck as I surrendered to the pull of his presence. As we finally separated, gasping for air, I leaned my forehead against his, with my eyes shut tight. I could feel my heart racing, each beat resonating with an intensity that bordered on pain. I insisted that we shouldn't, "Yet we shall, indeed," he responded. In that moment, we both understood he was right. From that moment on, it was inevitable. Excuses have run their course. The barriers of denial have crumbled away. A spark had ignited between us, setting a tale in motion, and neither of us put forth any real attempt to halt it. At the very least, the recognition, the shared honesty sparked an even greater desire, peeling back the final veils of doubt that had held us in a facade. As dawn broke, my husband departed, suitcase in hand, embarking on a journey of his own, the comforting sound of the front door shutting behind him, reminiscent of the gentle snap of a trigger being engaged. The absence he created lingered in the air, thick and palpable, a silence that resonates deeply. Each little sound. Once upon a time, there was a clock on the wall, its steady ticking echoing through the room, marking the passage of time in a rhythmic dance. The gentle whisper of the floorboards beneath my steps. Once upon a time, the distant chirp of birds outside the window filled the air with a gentle melody. Everyday noises strikingly intense. I found myself at the kitchen counter, my hands gently clasped around a coffee cup left untouched, a silent witness to moments gone by. My gaze lingered on the delicate wisp of steam spiraling into the air, as if I could immerse myself in that moment, escaping the heaviness that bore down on my heart. Yet I found myself unable to do so. My body felt alive in ways it hadn't in years. Unsettled, delicate. With a deep-seated feeling stirring within me, I caught the soft sound of a knock echoing from the back door. I moved forward without a second thought. I could sense it without even glancing. Before my eyes caught sight of him, I sensed his presence lingering in the air. He entered the room uninvited and bold, as if the space itself beckoned him in, gently shutting the door as he stepped away, his gaze locked onto mine, immediately deciphering the turmoil I had failed to convey. As he drew near, a wave of warmth surged beneath my skin, urging me to conceal myself. With each step, the distance that once separated us began to fade away. Silence enveloped us. His hand rose, fingertips brushing against my cheek, then weaving into my hair as he observed me intently. His touch conveyed a sense of assurance, devoid of any hostility. His thumb glided softly along my jaw, a tender touch that conveyed both a sense of patience and a hint of ownership all at once. The kiss arrived in a rush, this time, lacking the gradual, careful progression of those that had come before. His lips met mine with an intensity that mirrored my desire. His hands glided to my waist, drawing me closer, as if we had already lived a lifetime of unspoken desires. Perhaps we had in some way woven our experiences together, as in every fleeting glance we exchanged, we chose to overlook the unspoken connection that lingered between us. I can't recall how it happened, but my hands found their way into his hair, fingers gripping tighter as I leaned in closer. In the embrace, savoring the blend of longing and hesitation that rendered it unthinkable to pull away, my heart raced fiercely as if it were trying to escape, and I wondered if he could sense its rhythm echoing within me. He leaned in close, guiding me softly against the kitchen counter, one hand firmly at the small of my back, the other cradling my hip as if I were a fleeting moment that might vanish. If he released his hold, I surrendered to the moment, my body nestled against his, filled with anticipation, quivering yearning. For the embrace of his presence, the heaviness of his touch, the draw of his lips on mine. It was neither harsh nor thoughtless. Each caress was intentional. Each gesture measured to evoke longing, quick enough to ignite a blaze upon my skin. As his lips departed from mine and journeyed along the curve of my throat, a gasp escaped me, my head arching back instinctively, my fingers remaining entwined in his hair. His breath warmed my skin, his mouth gentle yet persistent as he traced kisses along the tender curve of my neck. "I can't stop," he whispered against my skin, his voice a husky murmur filled with intensity. I chose to remain silent. I was unable to do that. My thoughts faded into silence, while my body began to express a narrative I had neglected to listen to for far too long. This wasn't the first occasion my husband had departed, leaving me solitary in this house. It wasn't the first time I had experienced the heaviness of solitude seeping into the voids he left behind. Yet this marked the very first occasion I allowed another to delve into that void and take possession of it. The world beyond continued on just as it always had. The garden danced softly in the wind, the distant murmur of traffic, a subtle echo beyond the hedges, while the sky stretched vast and clear overhead. Unmoved on the surface, yet deep within everything was transformed. Vibrant, thrilling as he finally took a step back, his breath coming in heavy bursts, his hands lingering at my waist. His gaze remained fixed on me. Silence enveloped us, stretching on for what felt like an eternity. The atmosphere surrounding us crackled laden with the decision we had already embraced. "You realize this won't suffice," he remarked at last, his tone unwavering. I nodded slowly, my fingers gliding along the edge of the countertop, seeking something solid to anchor me in the moment. He was indeed correct. A kiss, a fleeting moment shared in the warmth of the kitchen. It could never satisfy the longing. The yearning had embedded itself too profoundly. As he turned to depart, I observed the graceful arc of his back, his shoulders squared, a silent testament to the weight of our recent actions, as if he were preparing to face the unfolding narrative of our choices. Yet he chose not to glance behind. I lingered in that moment, the door softly shutting behind him, my skin alive with the memory of his caress, my lips tender and full from the imprint of his kiss. Regret should have washed over me, yet instead I was consumed by an insatiable craving. The following morning, I awoke with the essence of him still present, hovering somewhere between my lips and the echoes of memory. Like an unseen ache that lingers with each inhale, the sunlight poured into the bedroom, creating gentle lines that danced across the floor and painted familiar shapes on the wall. Yet the atmosphere of the room seemed transformed, as if it now contained a mystery. I couldn't tuck away neatly among crisp linens and cluttered compartments. I could no longer fool myself. The pretense had to end. The boundary had been breached not through a mere misstep, but with complete awareness and intent. What truly unsettled me wasn't the guilt that was expected, but the insatiable hunger that intensified within me. Every moment I revisited his touch on my skin, his breath a gentle warmth against my neck, the coarse texture of his stubble grazing my jaw as his lips sought deeper connection. I wandered through the house that morning, my fingers grazing the furniture as if it were foreign, the kitchen counter where my back had bent under his hold, the chair he occupied the night before serene as a still lake, as if we hadn't laid bare our souls in the gentle glow of dawn. Each nook of the house seemed to hold a tale, even in the absence of any obvious evidence. The walls seemed to have soaked up every moment now, sending that warmth back to me, like a vivid memory coming to life. I occupied my hands tending to items that were perfectly in place, polishing surfaces that gleamed without a flaw. Every movement felt robotic, a feeble effort to drown out the mounting pressure within me. Yet no diversion could quell it. Every caress of my own hands against my body folding clothes, brushing hair back from my face, felt like it stirred the memories of where his fingers had lingered. As the clock struck noon, the house lay in an eerie stillness, the silence enveloping me like a heavy blanket, its weight palpable against my ears. I realized I couldn't endure the afternoon wandering between walls that echoed memories of him. I whispered to myself that I craved the fresh breeze a moment to escape, even if just for a fleeting hour. As I reached for my keys, a sense of simplicity enveloped me. I draped a sweater casually over my shoulders and slid my feet into the familiar flats waiting by the door. But the moment I stepped outside, my heart raced with the subtle thrill of encountering him once more, that exhilarating gamble of fate that had begun to feel far from coincidental. As I navigated the open road, the gentle purr of the engine created a serene backdrop to my wandering thoughts. The town streets danced by each corner, echoing with memories. Yet my thoughts drifted to the intensity of his stare, the confidence in his touch, the rhythm of his breathing. Heavy with desire as he leaned into me, I sensed the thrum of it deep within, an urge I couldn't quite articulate or fulfill all alone, without making a complete choice to embrace it. As I drove into the parking lot of the quaint little convenience store on the outskirts of town, a sense of nostalgia washed over me, the spot where I was aware he occasionally lingered where the paths intersected just frequently enough that an encounter there could still be seen as serendipity. I recounted, there I was on a simple quest for milk and bread, lost in the mundane rhythm of daily life. As I approached, my gaze swept across the lot, eager to spot the familiar outline of his car before I even turned off the engine. It was absent, and I ought to have experienced a sense of relief, yet what lingered within me was the profound weight of disillusionment. As I moved through the narrow aisles, I drifted along my hands, reaching for items almost on their own, while my mind floated elsewhere, detached from the moment I ventured into the next aisle. And there he stood, not at the counter, not outside, but positioned in front of the cooler, one hand resting against the metal door, the other nonchalantly tucked into his back pocket. His head turned at the sound of my footsteps, eyes meeting mine with the familiarity of someone who had been anticipating or yearning. For a brief moment, it was as if time stood still, and neither of us made a single move. I reached for the carton of milk closest to me, my fingers surprisingly calm despite the rapid beating of my heart. His eyes tracked the movement, measured and intentional. "Are you keeping up with me now?" His voice danced lightly, playfully, inviting. I shook my head briefly, a smile creeping onto my lips before I could rein it in. Not on purpose. The distance between us was thick and heavy, as if the cool air from the open fridge could not ease the tension that lingered. What about my skin? I shifted my body just enough to feign interest in the labels of the drinks before me, yet I could sense the warmth of his gaze resting against the curve of my back, as if it were a hand gently pressing down. "You're not wearing your ring," he remarked. His voice softened. I paused for a brief moment, my gaze drifting down to my hand, as unadorned as it had been that morning when I had absent-mindedly removed it, setting it softly into the dish next to the sink, where it typically rested at night. I chose to remain silent. The quiet stretched between us, laden with unspoken thoughts that neither of us dared to voice. Yet they lingered in the air, all the same, inarguable. He moved in his approach, relaxed yet deliberate, bridging the gap just enough for me to catch a hint of his cologne mingling with the fresh aroma of soap. My body tightened, my breath halting in my throat. "Would you like me to pause?" His question lingered in the air, gentle yet persistent. I might have spoken, ought to have yet. My mouth opened, and silence followed. Instead, I sensed the gentle pressure of his hand gliding softly across the small of my back, his fingers dancing upward until they met the curve of my shoulder. His thumb glided gently along the fabric of my sweater, his gaze fixed on mine, poised for any hint of resistance. There was nothing to share. As I released my breath, it trembled and faltered, my body leaning ever so slightly into his touch, like a moth irresistibly attracted to the flame. We held back, refraining from a kiss in the open, where eyes could linger. Yet the unspoken connection between us tightened, drawing our bodies closer in a wordless pact that neither of us was brave enough to articulate. The journey back seemed to stretch on forever. Each stoplight and every turn brings forth a reminder of the decision I had yet to confront, or maybe the one I had already embraced long before I was ready to acknowledge it. I wandered through the rooms for the remainder of the evening, filled with an unshakable restlessness, unable to find my place. My body yearned for the warmth of his touch, the strength of his hold, the pressure of his lips on mine. But beyond that, I longed for the way his gaze met mine, as if I were still breathing beneath the layers of routine and concession. The message arrived at last, brief and to the point. "Is there solitude in your presence?" I quickly typed the one word that resonated with my feelings. Indeed, I was already anticipating his arrival, even before he knocked. The knock at the door was gentle, almost courteous, as if the significance of what lay beyond could be softened by its tenderness. Yet it was not. My hands quivered against the polished surface as I grasped the handle, fingers wrapping firmly around it, urging myself to maintain a steady breath. It was clear to me who it was. The instant my phone buzzed, I sensed something significant was about to unfold. Against the kitchen counter, the solitary line of text shimmered in the dim light, beckoning me with an allure I was already too immersed in to resist. As I swung the door open, there he was, one hand casually tucked into his jeans pocket, the other propped against the frame, leaning just a bit, his gaze unwavering. He remained expressionless. He was under no obligation. The distance separating us crackled with energy, akin to being near a live wire, the atmosphere, heavy with expectation, vibrating just below the surface. I quietly moved aside, allowing him to pass by, the doorway to new beginnings. His gaze lingered on me, dressing deliberately to the loose knot of my hair, the delicate straps of the top I had picked both thoughtlessly and with intention. My body reacted swiftly, even before my thoughts could fully grasp the moment. The subtle clenching deep within me, the gentle warmth spreading through my chest as if my very skin recalled the sensation. With a gentle touch, I eased the door shut after him. Silence enveloped us. The moment lingered, drawn out and intense, until he approached me, bridging the gap with deliberate rhythmic strides. His hand extended, fingertips gliding along the contour of my collarbone, ascending to the gentle arch of my neck. I leaned my head back just a bit, a reflexive action, as his touch sparked a feeling I could no longer suppress with logic. "I shouldn't be here," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, yet his hand remained firmly in place. "I understand," I replied. And then I moved closer, eliminating the space that had only been a mirage, my form melding into his as if pulled by an unseen force. His mouth met mine with an intensity that was both known and urgent, lips pressing firmly, fingers weaving through my hair as he intensified the kiss. This time, there was an urgency that swept away any doubt, a raw desire that propelled forward without restraint. The kiss transformed, becoming bolder and heavier, infused with the essence of every moment we had restrained, every lingering glance, every breath we had secretly shared in the quiet spaces between us. In a place where we donned the masks of purity, his hands glided down my back, drawing me nearer, embracing me as if he feared I would disappear the moment he released his grip. I found myself drawn closer to him, my body yielding to his, giving into the irresistible force I had resisted in vain, the gentle warmth of his breath enveloping me. With his chest pressed firmly against my cheek, I felt the slow, intentional glide of his hand along my waist. Every moment pulled at the threads of my being, unraveling me slowly, one piece at a time. As he pulled away from the kiss, his forehead lingered against mine, our breaths mingling in a soft, delicate dance. "It felt oddly right," he murmured, and I loathed how deeply I resonated with that thought. We lingered in that moment, enveloped by the stillness of the house, where the only echoes were our uneven breaths and the gentle tick of the clock in the hallway, marking the seconds that slipped away, impossible to ignore any longer. "I can't stop wanting you," he said, his voice trembling just a bit at the edges, as if revealing a deeper tale beneath the surface. As my hand rose, my fingers softly brushed against his cheek, following the elegant line of his jaw. My lips parted, yet the words lingered weighty and unspoken. What can I express that won't come across as a justification? What narrative could illuminate the profound hunger that had embedded itself so deeply within me? In all honesty, I had no desire to bring it to an end. For years, I convinced myself that desire had a shelf life, that tying the knot signified the conclusion of yearning. A specific discomfort, a subtle fire lingering just under the surface. But here it was vibrant and intense, reminding me with every touch that I was still capable of longing. Not the courteous, restrained warmth I had learned to embrace, but something fierce, pressing, and inescapable. We drifted into the living room, almost instinctively. Our hands intertwined our bodies, compelled by the unspoken connection that lingered in the air. The couch welcomed me as I settled into its embrace, drawing him close, his presence enveloping me, his lips brushing against the tender spot beneath my ear. His fingers glided along the curve of my shoulder, gently easing the strap of my top down, as if revealing something precious, yet fraught with risk. My skin quivered under his caress. My body arched towards him, yearning for more. But then, just as the intensity between us was about to ignite into something beyond control, he halted, drawing back just enough to lock eyes with me. "You should leave," he murmured. I gazed at him, my heart racing beneath the delicate fabric, my lips tender and full from the intensity of his kiss. My heart pounded fiercely within my chest, the struggle between remorse and desire ripping me apart. Yet the words eluded me. My hand rose once more, fingers gripping the fabric of his shirt, drawing him closer as my lips sought his with a conviction that words could never convey. The evening enveloped us, the house standing as a quiet observer to the decision we repeatedly embraced unspoken, yet understood in the stillness of the air. In that fleeting instant, we were lost in each other with no thoughts of what lay ahead. Just the overwhelming intensity of now, the warmth of his body pressed against mine. The flavor of him lingered on my tongue. The warmth of his hands tracing the skin I had nearly forgotten, awakening a sense of vitality within me. And when he finally departed, long after the moon had ascended high above the rooftops, the heaviness of his absence filled the room as intensely as his presence once had. I found myself wide awake for what felt like an eternity. The sheets twisted around my legs, my body quivering with an unshakable tension. With the memory of his touch, the guilt I anticipated never arrived, replaced instead by the intense longing of realizing I would allow it to unfold once more. For the truth was clear. I wished it would go on forever. I longed to express that, following that night, clarity finally dawned on me that the burden of my actions weighed heavily upon me, that the embarrassment coiled around my neck so firmly I was left with no option but to admit the truth, flee, or resist. The desire was there, yet the outcome was different. What unfolded was perhaps even more troubling. What unfolded was a tale of hunger. Longing weaves a narrative of its own unfolding in its unique rhythm and adhering to its distinct principles. Once it grips you, once it discovers your vulnerabilities, it never releases its hold. It remains indifferent to the adornments of commitment or the time woven together in companionship. It simply takes its course. It lingers steadfast, assured yearning. The following days unfolded with me, pouring every ounce of energy into the mundane, leaving me utterly drained. I wore a smile when expected, took calls and responded to my husband's messages, all while my hands still tingled with the lingering warmth of another's touch. His voice on the line was warm and comforting, echoing the gentle care I had come to recognize over the years. He shared tales of the meetings, the colleagues he encountered, and the dinner invitation he received that he simply couldn't turn down. His words crafted a familiar narrative of our existence, secure routine, unbroken. I responded as I typically do, my tone unwavering, my answers instinctive. Yet deep down, an unseen force tugged at the strands of that tidy tapestry. As the layers peeled back gently, the house seemed to echo with a deeper solitude, a stillness that had always lingered in his absence. Yet I had transformed. Or perhaps I had finally brought to light a truth I had kept hidden for far too long. I began to rediscover who I am, the choices I made in my wardrobe each day, how my fingers danced over the smooth silk of particular blouses, the delicate lace of forgotten undergarments. Not for my husband, nor for the man I should have never embraced, but for the part of me I believed was lost, the woman who yearned to feel alluring, to feel alive once more. As I glanced at my reflection in the hallway mirror, I found myself lingering a bit longer than I once did. I allowed my gaze to wander over the gentle contours that time had etched upon my visage, the shape of my smile, the exposed skin of my shoulders. I lingered a bit too long, fiddling with the neckline of my dress, observing how the fabric embraced the contours underneath. The days wove together seamlessly, filled with minor duties and the weighty, lingering discomfort of anticipation. Each noise from outside made my heart race, and every floorboard creak tightened a knot deep within me. Uncertainty lingered in the air about whether he would return. The gentle knock at the back door caught me off guard, yet somehow I felt it was inevitable. With a sense of anticipation, I opened it without hesitation. He stood there fully present, shedding any pretense of ease, revealing the rawness of the moment. With his hands tucked into his pockets, he held a steady gaze, unwavering and resolute. "I really shouldn't be here," he repeated. I might have responded with identical phrases, echoing the same cautions. We both understood it held no significance yet. I remained unaware. Instead, I chose to take a step back. He glided by me with deliberate slowness, each step a careful calculation, as though he anticipated my hesitation, my desire to shut the door and halt, whatever this was, before it blossomed into something beyond our grasp. However, I left the door ajar. I trailed behind him into the kitchen, where the atmosphere grew denser, the thick silence enveloping us like a familiar embrace. I settled against the counter arms, casually crossed in front of me, observing him as he lingered in that moment, uncertain of the distance he could bridge time, uncertain if I would allow him in. He paused, his gaze lingering on my face, as if seeking a connection I wasn't quite ready to provide. A message, perhaps. Is it okay to proceed? A call to adventure. I offered him nothing. In that moment, the gentle arc of my form reclined, my lips slightly ajar, allowing my breath to escape in a calm, measured rhythm, while my gaze remained fixed on him. It was sufficient. He traversed the distance that separated us, his hand rising, fingertips grazing softly against my cheek, before weaving into my hair, holding it just firmly enough to draw my face closer to his. The kiss arrived with intensity, his lips colliding with mine, carrying the burden of every moment spent in anticipation. The intensity was palpable, as his breath mingled with mine, a fervent desire radiating from the way he held me captive, between the unforgiving counter and the strength of his embrace. I surrendered without hesitation, entirely. My hands found their way to his shoulders, fingers weaving into the fabric of his shirt, drawing him nearer, craving something deeper. This time, there was an absence of careful pacing, no gentle, hesitant caresses, just the deep longing of two souls who understood the boundaries, yet crossed them regardless. His lips wandered down my neck, brushing against the delicate skin beneath my ear, causing me to gasp as my body instinctively leaned into his touch. His hands traced the curve of my back, slipping beneath the edge of my blouse, radiating warmth and strength against my skin. We transitioned from the kitchen to the living room in silence, our bodies entwined, hands exploring with abandon, lips barely parting for a fleeting breath. The couch embraced us once more, my back nestled into the cushions, his presence anchoring me in the moment. In that instant, I shed the last remnants of my doubt. But then he hesitated, drawing back slightly to gaze down at me, his breath-deep eyes probing. We're just getting started, aren't we? His voice carried a gritty texture, heavy with the struggle between holding back and yearning. I chose to remain silent. I lifted my hand, my fingertips gliding over his jawline, gently drawing him closer. Our lips meeting once more. The truth lingered in the air, unspoken and undeniable. As the night embraced us, his hands traced my form, and I let go of the questions that once clouded my mind. In that moment, I understood that this was simply meant to be. When my husband came back, the house had already mastered the art of holding onto my secret. The walls embraced the quiet, guarding the secrets of what had transpired within, as if they had not seen the gradual, intentional unraveling of the life I had painstakingly constructed. In the heart of the home, the kitchen sparkled with cleanliness. The bed lay perfectly made, and the laundry was folded with care, each piece tucked away neatly in its designated drawer. My hands glided through the motions with an almost robotic accuracy, my body executing the familiar gestures of a woman whose life appeared to be in harmony, yet within me, chaos reigned. Some betrayals whisper rather than shout, lacking the sound of slamming doors, raised voices, or objects hurled in fury. Some betrayals unfold in silence, creeping in like a subtle whisper, barely detectable at the outset. Yet one day, you find yourself standing on a crumbling foundation, the truth finally surfacing beneath your feet. I expected to sense it, the heavy burden of shame, the overwhelming guilt that's meant to linger close. But I found that guilt doesn't always make a sound. At times it takes on the expression of yearning. At times it evokes the essence of a moment you wish you could rewrite, a fleeting encounter that lingers in memory. For 2 days following that final night, he maintained a careful distance. I didn't see him. I didn't hear the knock at the back door, but his presence lingered all around me. I found myself gazing out the kitchen window longer than I should have, anticipating a shadow to pass by. My skin still tingled where his hands had once held me, fingers mapping out memories that hadn't yet dimmed. It was then that my husband entered, suitcase in hand. His smile was a gentle arc I had encountered countless times, warm, reassuring, and comforting. He pressed his lips to my cheek, a warm gesture devoid of desire, and inquired about the house, the garden, and the small nuances that had perpetually existed in the space between us. I responded in my usual manner, maintaining an even tone and a courteous smile. Yet a fragment of my being lingered outside, observing the unfolding drama, like an outsider witnessing the woman who had once held steadfast to her boundaries, now acquiescing as if she hadn't already reduced those boundaries to mere dust. At dinner, I absorbed his narratives about the conference, the colleagues, the successful deals, and those that had fallen short. His words danced through the air, weaving tales between bites of roasted chicken and sips of the same dry, reliable wine. He always chose a comforting presence at the table. Just like him, I wore a smile when expected, chuckled at the appropriate times, and reached out to touch his hand across the table. The movement fluid, rehearsed, and natural, yet within my mind drifted to firmer grips, to lips that embraced with genuine intent. That night, as we nestled together in the stillness of our shared bed, his touch was soft and unhurried, just as it had always been. Yet my body remained unresponsive to his call. I found myself beneath him, eyes shut, hands gently placed at his sides, my thoughts drifting far away, my skin yearning for a spark that never arrived. I understood the role I had to embody, the nuances of sound. I needed to create the precise angle of my posture and how to conclude the act while remaining in character. Yet deep down, I experienced nothing genuine. Instead, I was haunted by the echoes of another's emotions. As the moment came to a close, he pressed a gentle kiss on my shoulder and murmured how much he had longed for me. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing down the pain that threatened to surface in my throat. I pondered whether he sensed the emptiness within me, the void where affection had once thrived. The following morning, I went through the familiar routine once more. Morning meals, the clatter of plates, and the endless tasks I promised myself to tackle. As he stepped out for the day, the briefcase danced gently by his side, his posture exuding confidence, with a straight back and squared shoulders, embodying a sense of trust in the journey ahead. As the door clicked shut, a heavy silence enveloped me, and I could feel my breath hitching in my chest. It's hard to say whether I had been anticipating the message, or if a part of me had already crafted it in my mind long before it appeared on my screen. "Do you have some time to chat?" The solution was right there, poised just under my fingertips, before I could even begin to debate with my own thoughts. "Gather around." The knock at the back door arrived with an urgency that caught me off guard, as if he had been lurking nearby, as if he was aware of the gap I had unwittingly left behind. For him, the door within me that I had left ajar when I welcomed him in silence spoke volumes between us. Only the unwavering attraction of souls that had made their choices long before any consent was sought. His hands sought me out effortlessly, as if they instinctively recalled the contours of my being. My body responded to him before my thoughts could catch up. Yet on this occasion, there was an unmistakable change. This time, as he cradled my face in his hands, his lips met mine with a familiar longing. Yet there was a serene pace, a gentle exploration devoid of urgency or frantic movements. In the quiet moments, there was a sense of waiting, a calm endurance that spoke volumes. Once upon a time, there existed a deep sense of care, and that in some way deepened the impact. It seemed to hold a deeper significance. There was a certain magic in the way his fingers danced along the edge of my jaw, moving slowly, as if he were etching the moment into his memory. The gentle caress of his lips on my throat, the comforting heaviness of his body, melding with mine, created a moment that felt timeless, as if we were wrapped in an endless embrace, and I loathed it, for desiring him was one thing, but relying on him was an entirely different tale. Yet this softness, this perilous allure, seemed to mark the dawn of an experience neither of us could truly possess when it was over, as we lay entwined in the gentle remnants of it. His hand lingered gently on my hip, his thumb tracing slow, absent circles on my skin. "We can't keep doing this." I finally spoke, my voice barely rising above a whisper. He simply listened. He simply shared his experiences without any guarantees or justifications. He simply nodded, his eyes shut, with his forehead gently leaning against my shoulder. Yet we remained still, neither of us rising from our place. In the quiet of that instant, clarity washed over me. What haunted me the most? It wasn't the remorse I found myself in a place where the desire to continue was undeniable.